Every other Monday, our friends from Motherhood for Good join us and talk about topics that are in the news, reasons why busy parents should be thinking about political issues because they do affect them. And with 1 year to go until the election, our friends there said, why don't we get pretty much the whole executive team on and talk about the importance of the race? And so welcome to the radio, Danielle Scampini, Lynn, Kate Duffy, Aaron Phillips, Emily Tyne, pretty much the whole group except Nicole Slavin, who has been away for more than a month. So I got to figure out what I said to her and apologize for it. But other than that, ladies, good morning. Nice to have you here.
Good morning. Happy Monday.
Yeah, thanks. You as well. I know that you, well, first off, let me get the Instagram address up because the best way to learn about the Motherhood for Good folks is over at Instagram and search for Motherhood for Good, and you'll see what they're doing, the messages that they're providing. I'm just going to go, clockwise around my computer screen to all of you ladies here. So, Danielle, first one comes to you about the, why today. It's not just you, it's a lot of people are making a big deal about, that this is 1 year away. That used to be kind of exhausting. Like, don't tell me the election's a year away, but now it seems like it's really, people want to start focusing on these things. Why is that?
I think it's because in the last, decade, we'll say almost a decade, people have become a lot more engaged. They're starting to realize how important elections are, how much they matter to their daily lives. And so they're starting to tune in sooner. And I think that's great. They want to be more informed. They want to understand what the candidates are, what their issues are. And also time is flying. I don't know, maybe that's just me as a busy parent, but I know we're saying, it's a year away, but I think we're going to blink and it's going to be the election. And so I think a lot of people are feeling that as well, as let's get engaged now before it's kind of too late.
Yeah, very much so. And Kate, that's always been part of the, Motherhood for Good reason for existing, is to get people engaged early and not say, I wish I would have known sooner. I could have made a difference. That's something that you want to get to people right now who aren't already engaged. What do you tell them as far as, how you can start to do that?
Well, that's our whole thing, is like getting engaged politically sustainably. It's kind of like training for a marathon, right? Like you can't just like all of a sudden run a marathon a year from now. You have to learn how to incorporate it into your life and practice, sustainability and consistency over time. So our whole thing is don't wait until it's go time. And then you have to feel like you need to do all these phone banks or knock on doors or do all these things, which those are always great when it is go time. But find 10, 15 minutes every day to just find a couple different media outlets or whatever, or podcasts or accounts on Instagram that can keep you informed, and just digest that information and start looking at some of the races that are going to be happening, both, at the top of the ticket and some of your local races, and just put in a little bit of time every day, a little bit every week, however you want to do it. And just educate yourself and start talking to people about, the elections that are going to be coming up, because it is going to be here before we know it. So not only is it a year until the elections, it's also been a year since we formed Motherhood for Good, which was right after the midterms last year. And that totally did fly by. I cannot believe it's been a year. So yes, before we know it, we are going to be having this conversation on a Monday morning right before the election again. And we're going to be like, how did we get here already? So our whole thing is do what you can daily or weekly, so that it doesn't feel like a tidal wave when the elections come on. And here in Wisconsin, they're so intense that we know there's messaging everywhere. So if you already kind of know what's going on and you don't have to drink from the fire hose, it's a little bit easier.
Aaron, we hear a lot, obviously, about the presidential election, which is 1 year away. And it is, of course, very important. But here in Wisconsin, we have an even bigger race from a state standpoint with Tammy Baldwin seeking re-election. There is not a leading Republican candidate right now, but we also have to remind people, nobody knew who Ron Johnson was until about 5 months before the election when he just popped on the scene. So given that Motherhood for Good first came to be as Moms for Mandela, I'm guessing you're going to have an interest in this Senate race too, and tell folks why that is, why it's important that Tammy Baldwin's re-election race against an opponent yet to be named is important to Wisconsin parents.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if any listeners haven't familiarized themselves yet with Tammy Baldwin, you should immediately. You should learn about her story, try to go to an event where she's going to be. I mean, she's just incredible. So, one, we have to protect having her as representing our state. I mean, she's just an incredible senator. The work that she does in Congress is astounding. And, she really gets stuff done. And so, what do moms want to see in a candidate? They want to see candidates who get stuff done. And Tammy does that. But also, like you're saying, I feel like of all the states, people in Wisconsin, voters in Wisconsin need to never, never lean on being complacent, right? Like you're saying, nobody knew who Ron Johnson was when he came along to run. We need to make sure that we aren't laying back, resting on our laurels, which Tammy has plenty, but we can't rest on our laurels. We have to protect her seat. We have to protect her in this seat, and then just ensure that, frankly, at the moment, that Republicans keep being scared to run anybody against her. Somebody will come up. I mean, that's crazy to think otherwise. But it's just crucial, right? She's such a powerhouse, and we just have to do everything we can to stand behind her.
And it's important, I think, Emily, to note that whether it's overconfidence about, Tammy Baldwin's current situation, or people, bedwetting about Joe Biden's poll numbers, that, any assumptions you make today, 52 weeks out, are foolish, and that you basically have to, what's the deal is plan to work and then work the plan. So Emily, what's your plan for, talking to new parents and getting them engaged in, this type of outreach and activity?
Yeah, I think if the last few elections have taught us anything, that moms and parents are going to make a big difference. We have a huge voting bloc in this country, and we turned out because of Roe, but I think many of us are here because there's nothing more radicalizing in terms of paying attention to what's happening in our politics and in our government than becoming a parent and going through some of the things. All it takes is to see one of your friends go through a maternal health crisis, or struggle getting back to work with too short of parental leave, or struggle to find childcare, to really understand that what you do in the ballot box impacts your day-to-day and your children. And so our plan is to just continue to do what Kate was saying. A lot of my friends who used to not vote or who used to not pay attention, they do, not because right before the election I'm texting them and asking them to vote, but because I'm checking in on them as a friend. But then I also feed them a little bit of that data or that article I read, or a point of view of one of the folks that are running, and remind them that all the elections matter, right? Having Biden in the White House is going to be critical to so many different things. And he's done so much in his first term, and we've got to share that with folks, but it's all the way down the ballot. And in Wisconsin, we're going to have our state assembly up and our state senate. And hopefully we'll have fair maps soon, but we can also make a lot happen in the electorate just by getting out to vote. So our plan is to just keep having those day-to-day personal conversations and connecting with voters, getting them to the polls.
Danielle, the Dobbs decision, of course, has been motivating voters ever since it came out. And Dr. Lyerly was on in the last hour to remind us not to look past tomorrow in several other states, Ohio, one of them, with issue 1 on the ballot. However that turns out, and again, all indications are that women and advocates for women's healthcare rights are going to be at the polls as much as ever before. I sense that this will continue to be an issue that motivates people. I just want to know if you still think that's going to be the case. I know I've asked it before, but people ask, will this whole anger about the Dobbs decision, will it cool off in the coming year?
The easy answer is no, because, even if it's not top of the news, top of the headlines every single day, it is top of mind for people of childbearing age and people who care about people of childbearing age. Just because you're not hearing about it every single day because of everything else that's going on in the world, that will always, it's about your personal bodily autonomy. And that can never be pushed to the back of your mind. So I definitely think it's going to still be a motivating factor. And it kind of has to be, because it affects all of us. It affects us. It will affect our children if we don't get this, fixed. So I definitely think that is going to remain a motivating factor in the coming election.
And then from a state standpoint, Kate, one of the motivating factors has to be the Republican legislators and their intransigence on supporting childcare, and continuing to once again just trash the governor's proposal for supporting childcare and saying, let's just pass tax cuts instead. Now, the governor was able to divert some funds to keep childcare accounts alive into early 2025. But again, the reaction from Republican legislators, who in so many words were saying, well, if more women would stay home, we wouldn't have this problem. I'm thinking I've seen the people taking action at the Capitol. This is going to be a thing throughout the year.
Oh my gosh. I can't. Are you trying to get me riled up?
How we doing?
Our Republican state legislature is really just something. And I think that's one of those things. They give us plenty of material to kind of talk to people about all the time, especially with childcare. That's been a really big one that's been in the news, that they just refuse to do anything about, have these ridiculous statements that like mothers should just stay home with their children. Again, they're trying to like send us back to the 1950s trad wife scenario. Maybe we want to work and we're good at work. And can you imagine if like the people who are listening, if, the women that you worked with, who are probably some of the most reliable people you worked with, all of a sudden didn't work anymore? Like, we're not going back in that direction. And beyond the childcare, I mean, there's just so many things that our Republican legislature kind of just refuses to take action on. They just stall everything. They don't work across the aisle at all. They never want to compromise. And I think the more we can share those instances of them just sticking their feet in the ground and not making any progress whatsoever, the more we can highlight those races and how important they are to people as well. And again, somebody mentioned the fair maps. We'll see what happens with the maps, but we're going to be so much better off if we can get people engaged in those state legislature races and start voting for those as well. So we can get better representation at that level, and people who care about moms and parents and working families, and giving them the resources that they need to be able to not only thrive here in Wisconsin, but then be a destination where more people want to move here and come here, because we are not headed in that direction, and something needs to change.
And speaking of redistricting, now things could move really fast next year with this redistricting lawsuit. They could move slow enough that there aren't new maps for next year. But Aaron, there is also the chance that they redraw all of the legislative district maps. So everybody's going to have to figure out where they live, what district they live in, who's going to run. Do we have to recruit candidates for this race or that race? So, I mean, all the more reason for people to stay plugged in on, who their legislator is, and not assume, that there's not going to be a competitive race, because there may be a lot of competitive races next year, right?
Yeah. And exactly as you're saying, I mean, this is the big takeaway with anything about maps right now is, if you are already informed, stay plugged in. If you're not informed, if you don't feel like you understand what's currently going on with maps in Wisconsin, get informed, because sort of no matter what happens, there's going to be a learning curve where we're either figuring out what new districts are, we're figuring out how to basically double down if we're still in our current districts, and what we're needing to do is educate every single person we know about why this momentum keeps needing to happen to change the maps. Either way, it's just like more learning, more educating, more talking to your friends, and seeing this through, whether it's a short game or a long game.
And Emily, I left you just enough time to say, where can people go on the InstaFace if they want to learn more about Motherhood for Good?
Yeah, check us out on Instagram, Motherhood for Good. We also have a Facebook page where we share a lot about what's going on in our community and things like that. And it's important to stay looking in, because we're going to have some events in person, and we're going to really be ratcheting things up going into the next year.
All right. Very good. Thank you, ladies, so much. We appreciate it. Have a great
Thanks,
week.
Pat.
Talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Bye, Pat.
Back with Terry Bell after this.